All right, so great. We're recording, and I'm going to do a 3-2. So we'll have a moment of silence and 3-2-1 clap. It's going to sound funny, but it's for our producer so he can find all this. But so on a 3-2-1, I'm going to start. Welcome everyone to Prepping 2.0. This is Shelby Gallagher, joined by my co-host and life and co-host on this show, Glen Tate. Hello, Glen.
Hello, Shelby. It's video. It's cool.
Which is why I'm a little muffled because we're video, so I've got my face covered because I'm so afraid of COVID. Not true. But anyway.
Stalkers. She's afraid of stalkers. And she has good reason to, because if you don't mind me saying I'm biased, she's my wife. There's a lot of beauty under that mask. Being honest with you.
That makes perfect sense.
Well, I wanted to welcome Fairfall, otherwise known as Fernando. Fairfall, by the way, comes from the first three letters of Fernando and then the last letters, F-A-L, of the battle rifle, the right arm of freedom, 308 battle rifle, which is used by Argentinian forces, if I recall. Yeah. And so that's where the name comes. We'll call him Fernando Fairfall because we're so tight with him. We just call him nicknames and real names back.
Fernando is just fine.
Okay,
no,
Fernando,
good.
There we go. Guys, he lived through Argentina in the 2000 era, meaning the year 2000, and the collapse there. And he's lived through what, quite honestly, is coming to the United States. And you can write all the fiction you want. You can have all the Army survival manuals you want. And what you need is somebody who's lived through it and written about it. He has some nonfiction books that are must-reads. They absolutely are must-reads. Again, the living through it part. One of them is Surviving the Economic Collapse. Links will be in the show notes here on Prepping 2.0. And also, he wrote Street Survival Skills. And he has a really cool YouTube channel called The Modern Survivalist. And this video, now Prepping 2.0 listeners on the radio and on the podcast are hearing the audio portion of this. The video with Shelby and I backstage doing the recording and Fernando being on here will play on The Modern Survivalist. So I highly recommend that for a variety of reasons, you subscribe to The Modern Survivalist. Fernando has had for several weeks now Matt Bracken on every Saturday, and those shows are about 2 hours long. I download those, and when I go on long drives, I listen to every single one of them. They are gold, absolute gold. So you're doing yourself a favor by being on his YouTube channel. And then finally, this is now focused on Prepping 2.0 listeners. And I should pause and mention, for those of you watching on The Modern Survivalist, Prepping 2.0 is at prepping2-0.com, prepping2-0.com. All the shows are there. We have regular shows. And then we have after shows for our Patreon supporters. And I mention that because we're going to ask Patreons get to ask questions of our guests. How cool is that to ask Fernando a question? And they've asked 17 questions. And so we'll be going over those in the after show. But you can get all that by watching this on The Modern Survivalist. Kind of an incentive there. So there's that. So as usual, we're going to jump straight into Fernando in just a moment. But as usual, we always start off with the list of the 100 things that go the quickest in a collapse. And this is, I mean, I'm sure Fernando could say, yep. Those are all things to do. And Shelby's going to start us off with this week's top 100 things. What is that, Shelby?
We are on number 88. We're almost to the end of the list. So I encourage folks, if you want to know where this list is, because these days it's a shopping list. And it was put together, I always say this, by the folks who survived the Bosnian collapse in the 90s. It's interesting talking to Furfall about this because I'm like, I would wonder if you've ever seen this list. But we're on number 88. Number 88 is gloves, all kinds of gloves. Working, warming, gardening, anything that will protect your hands, gloves. We have a crud ton of gloves, and I feel like we need to get a few more now that I've seen that on the list. So encourage you to go to find that list. It's on our website, prepping2-0.com, on the kind of the right-hand lower part. It's a shopping list these days, so go check that out. So let's get into it, though, Glenn.
Yeah, let's just jump into it. Fernando, thank you for being here. I'm just going to ask you an open-ended question, and this is Fernando's story hour. So please just go with it. We have a hard break. Oh, that's another thing for listeners of The Modern Survivalist that you may not be used to. We put our show on radio stations, terrestrial radio stations in the United States. And so we have hard breaks. So in about 20 some minutes, we'll say sorry, Fernando, we have to go to a break, and then we'll go to a break. So please understand that. So, but it's free flowing, Fernando. Let me just start off with this. How did Argentina collapse, and when did it collapse?
Man, yeah, that's a pretty. Look, it's been different stages. I mean, I wrote about the 2001 collapse when Argentina defaulted on its national debt. I think it was 132 billion. At the time, it was the largest default of a national debt. But the country had been struggling in different stages before that. During the 80s, it already had seen hyperinflation, so it wasn't a stranger to that type of thing. But 2001 was a moment in which the country defaulted on its national debt, unemployment skyrocketed. I think it was like 25%, give or take. It was impossibly high. And inflation started destroying people's savings. And of course, banks closed their doors and left people without anything, without any of their money.
Yeah, and so it was a default. It was a financial collapse.
Yeah.
Were there political things going on that sort of made it worse?
Yeah, and I think that because a lot of people are watching this right now and thinking of current events in the United States, of course, how could you not? I think that the worst came after that in terms of the political left-wing extremism that we saw after 2001, because everyone being so desperate, they were looking for desperate solutions, and anything sounded good at that time. So it took a very strong left-wing turn from 2001 on forward.
Yeah, and later on, we're going to talk about parallels between Argentina and the U.S., but give us an idea, like a day in the life of Fernando. By the way, roughly how old were you when all this happened?
Man, I was just getting married. I think I was like 22, give or take. I don't remember exactly, but I was just getting married. It was not the perfect time for that. Yeah, that was interesting.
So here you are in the prime of your life. You got your whole life ahead of you. You've grown up in Argentina. One thing a lot of people in America may not understand about Argentina, and please fill in on this, Fernando, because you live there and I haven't, but everyone might think, oh, Argentina's in South America. It's got to be a train wreck like, say, Central America or something like that. Argentina, especially in the 80s, 90s, and up until about 2000, was a prosperous, peaceful, wonderful place. Please fill in like what was like before the collapse, and then spend a lot of time talking about what life was like after the collapse. Like, what did tomatoes cost, and talk about gangsters and all that kind of stuff.
Look, it was 80s, 90s. Argentina always struggled with a poor economy, but culturally speaking, it was a very good place economically as well. People, there was a very strong, very clear middle class. You know what I mean? I mean, I lived in the United States. I know how to compare both. And I mean, being a kid, I remember because I lived in U.S. when I was little, and my folks, my father works in banking back in the day, and we were living in Boston. So we were, even when we went back to Argentina, we were thinking about going back. And I remember the conversation of, well, it would be nice to go back to the States, but we wouldn't be making as much money as we're making here. So the average, and this is just the way it is, the average manager, like an executive, you would be making more money in Argentina than in the United States. Your standard of living in many cases would be better. And that was pretty, I mean, there was still a very clear level of poverty, was very much real poverty in Argentina. But for the middle class, it was like you were just saying, it was like the exception to what most of Latin America is. It wouldn't compare to Mexico. It wouldn't compare to anything else. It was just a different place. You had a lot better education, job opportunities. The cultural scenario was completely different. Buenos Aires is a very large, I mean, till this day, people go to Buenos Aires and they, hey, this is a pretty decent, large city, and it wasn't as dangerous even. There was always crime and such, but in many cases, it was safer than many of some of the more dangerous cities in the United States. So you'd be living safer. You had a good quality of life. Why would you, back in those days, if that's where you live, where you had your family, why would you go to America? It just didn't make a whole lot of sense. Of course, that changed a lot after 2001. and changed by, I mean, the easiest way to explain this, it would be, imagine if right now you go to Walmart and everything costs 3 times as much, and you're not making 3 times as much money, or you're even lost your job. So you have $100 and now you're buying like 4 bottles of Coke with that, it's that kind of thing. How would you deal with that? And a lot of people just didn't. Guess that's the best way to explain it.
One other thing about Argentina, and you can go ahead and laugh, everybody, if you want. In the 6th grade, I wrote a report on Uruguay, and I remember, and they're obviously different countries. I remember they would say, well, over in Argentina, X, Y, and Z. And I was like, Argentina sounds pretty cool. It was supposed to be on Uruguay, but I ended up learning a lot about Argentina. It's a big country. There are a lot of rural areas. You guys have, and there's a word for it. Forgive me for not remembering it from the 6th grade, but basically you guys have cowboys. I mean, you have ranches and stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, a lot. It's because a lot of it is very much flat, and it's like ideal for cattle and that sort of thing. So there's, and it's a very large. I think it's like this. I mean, it's not United States, but I think it's like 7th or 8th largest country in the planet. So it's a big place. And you have ideal weather for growing, for food production. It makes food. Still makes food for 10 times its own population. So it's a country that should be doing. And of course, natural resources. You have jungles up north. You have deserts to the west. I mean, you have glaciers to the south, forests. You have pretty much anything that you could think of in terms of natural resources. But it's just the people that ruin it. And Uruguay is like the little brother of Argentina. Sometimes they get angry because it used to be another province of Argentina. So it kind of gained its independence with, I think it was when fighting Brazil at some point. But the connection is very much, it's like brother country. They're very close.
Yeah, and I bring all this up because I want people to know that what happened in Argentina is not, it didn't happen on the moon. I mean, it's not, there are so many parallels to the United States. This is one of the reasons I find Argentina and Fernando's books so great, is because it's a glimpse into kind of quasi-America. Things are going well, things are functioning well, prosperous. Cowboys, for goodness sakes. It began with a G, Fairfall. What is the name, you guys? It's like a
Gauchos.
That's what it is. Thank you. They have hats that are, anyway, it doesn't matter. This isn't the cowboy hat show. This is Prepping 2.0 and the modern survivalist. But so there you have it. Life is good. And then what happens, and describe what stuff costs, describe crimes. You've described in the past the flea markets or the trading posts and that sort of thing. And I'm going to be honest, I've never actually had an opportunity to thank you about this. Listening to you on Jack Spirko's show and reading the books, one book at the time, I think, I got a lot of ideas for my book series, 299 Days, which I guess modern survivalist viewers may or may not know about. It's a 10-book prepper novel series. It's been very popular, to my great surprise. And some of the stuff in there, some of the scenes and some of the conditions, are straight up out of Fernando's descriptions of things. So I want to give you a lot of credit for giving me ideas that I couldn't have had having not lived in Argentina. So anyway, what was life like when stuff was falling apart? And especially talk about how the rural areas may not be as safe as people think.
Sure. Well, I just did it because I have a Spanish channel as well, which to my surprise, it has 150,000 followers. It's doing great, really. And I find that people are very much into this sort of thing in Spanish as well, for a Spanish community. And I just did a video in my Spanish channel of how they went after a guy, 72-year-old man that lives pretty much in the country. You see the farm, you see farmland right in front of him. And, farmland in Argentina is different compared to the United States because there's really nothing. It is a very underdeveloped country to a great extent. Most of the people focus in Buenos Aires, Córdoba, a couple other places. But I mean, if you're in a farm in the United States, you can just drive to a Walmart, within an hour, 2 hours, give or take? Would that be somewhat accurate?
Oh, 2 hours would be pretty long. Yeah, probably an hour, half hour. We're half hour from one, and we're in the middle of nowhere.
Correct. In Argentina, you could drive half a day, and you would. I mean, there's places in which if you don't have the gas for it, you better have more than the famous tank gas because you're not going to be making it because it's just there's nothing. There's just desert or just field and nothing else. So you see this last video that I analyzed for my Spanish channel. There's this guy opening like the gate of his farm, and all of a sudden a car just drops by and three guys just attack him. Now he's armed and he ends up killing two of these guys, and miraculously he's not he's not injured. But that is a very typical thing. You're in the middle of nowhere. You think I'm so far from the city, I'm fine. No, you're not. You think you're fine, and it's not going to be like roving gangs of like masses of zombie looters or what. It is just attack teams that come after you. It's not like a wave because it's organized crime that they're just going after you because you're in an isolated place. Probably you have stuff worth stealing from you. So out of nowhere, they just drop by and hit you. And many times it ends up pretty bad for those being attacked. Of course, you avoid a lot of the nasty stuff that you see in cities, but it's usually more of the petty crime and often very violent crime as well, because maybe you catch a bullet outside the bank. They just want to steal what you have in your pocket. But it is not that living in the country is this magical solution to all things crime related when a country goes to hell.
Wow. Yeah, and you said something that was pretty chilling in I forget which book. Basically, the farther away you are, when the bad guys come, there's no one to hear you scream.
Yeah.
That's very tragic, and some very awful things happened on some of the ranches and farms out there. By the way, I have to ask this because it's a key ingredient to everything. In, say, the 80s, 90s, and up to 2000, what kind of gun laws did Argentina have? The reason I ask is Americans are sitting back, and we have this view, and I see a shotgun over your left shoulder, by the way, so you're not disarmed where you are now. But the rest of the world, nobody has any guns, and so we're all different, and we don't have to worry about these kinds of things. What were the level of armament, basically?
Yeah. Well, one thing I like to point out, because it's usually the left in the United States that always points out towards other countries, how they do things and how they want to replicate. Look, if this idea that everyone else is unarmed and no one has a gun outside of the United States, and anyone and people in the United States are crazy because they have guns. Look at the most armed countries in the planet. You'll see it's in Wikipedia. Look at armed guns per 100,000 population. The best countries in the world are always the most armed. You're going to be looking at Finland. You're going to be looking at Switzerland. Germany has a lot of guns. I mean, I have the gun that you see there in the back. In the United States, that would be a short barrel shotgun. It would require even extra paperwork. And I bought it like any other shotgun because it doesn't matter how long the barrel is. My AR is 14.5-inch barrel length. That would be requiring a stamp and $200, I believe, if I'm getting that right.
Yes.
So this idea that anything else is completely unarmed. Now, what is also very interesting is that the less liberty you have, the less rights you have to have guns. So, for example, you go to Cuba, communist country, you cannot own any type of firearm. You go to a place, some of the more dangerous places in Central America, they have awful gun laws. You cannot have anything at all. Now, you mentioned Uruguay. Uruguay is one of the, at a point it was called like the Switzerland of Latin America. I wouldn't go as far, but it is maybe one of the safest options you have. It is very safe. It's pretty good in general. If I had to pick one place in South America, I'd probably look at Uruguay. And there's lots of people from Argentina moving to Uruguay right now because the situation in Argentina right now is very bad. Uruguay has the best gun laws in all of South America by far. So, and they recently elected a right-wing conservative government. So they got their act put together, It's the same thing time and again. You have the more free countries have the better gun laws. Now, in Argentina, you could have handguns. You couldn't have like center fire semi-automatic weapons, which it's kind of a shame. But you could have pretty decent firearms. You could have any kind of pistol that you wanted, lever action rifles, semi-automatic shotguns. The only thing would be ARs, AKs. Those would be tougher to get.
Okay, so we have a couple minutes before we go into our hard break. TMS viewers, it's the thing we have to do, as I mentioned, the radio breaks. So I'll start off with a question, and we'll have to cut you off very unceremoniously. Our apologies, but it'll get things started. So describe the day that, if it was a day, describe when the country defaulted and what happened with prices and fear and consternation and politics and all that stuff. It was like that shocking time when, I'm guessing, you turned on the TV and said, uh-oh. What was that like?
Awesome. Do you answer it right now, or we're going to be going?
Yeah, no, we're going to have to cut out in about 2 minutes, but I wanted to start off the question. Sorry about that. Those doggone hard radio.
Don't worry. Don't worry. Yeah. Well, we'll go back to it after the break, right?
Yeah, but you can get us started if you want.
You have like 2.5 minutes. So yeah,
2.5 minutes.
You can cover a lot. So you're good.
So what was, in terms of prices, man, that was like one day, within hours, I saw prices double, triple, like from not only from one day to the next. I've told this a million times, but I was buying, I think it was a drill and a couple other things in a hardware store. By the time I picked it up, it was like 30 something bucks. By the time I was paying for it, it had double in price. And I had a little argument with the clerk there. We went back and we peeled off the stickers because they would just put one price on top of the other. They didn't even have enough time so as to remove the old price. So that's how bad it got.
And then, of course, talk about food prices. What was that like?
Food prices would depend a lot on what you were buying. If it was local, you usually got a little bit of a better price. But keep in mind, anything being produced is able to be sold in the international market, so the price will go up as well. Why sell it locally if I can sell it for US dollar prices? So food went up as well. People just ended up buying whatever they found the cheapest. That was basically how most people got by.
Right, and you told the story, and we only have a few more seconds. Sorry to do this, but
nope, and I'll jump in there too.
Yeah, so sure. You told the story about people buying things that they didn't need, really, because they knew the price would go up and they might be able to trade with it. Did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, people would buy absolutely anything that they thought could retain its value. People, for example, buying a car would be a good way of saving your money because the car retains somewhat its value, and you would be selling it for more money later on as the currency devaluates.
Wow. So let me jump in here. We always like to talk about our sponsors because they are amazing people. And then we'll take a quick break. We got so many more questions to ask you, Fernando. So one of our great sponsors is EMP Shield. If you go to prepping2-0.com and click on Friends and Affiliates, you'll see there's a coupon code there to get $50 off your purchase. And what's really great about EMP Shield, it will protect you and your your home, your car from your device from an EMP or whatever, that cosmic surge from the sun. So really great folks over there. And you get $50 off your purchase. So folks, don't go away. We've got so much more to talk about with Furfall at the other side of the break.
Awesome.
So we're going to, so those of you who are watching, you get to watch kind of the backstage of the production. So there you go. So I'm going to start us off on
I Miss America mask. I like it.
We got to send you one.
Yep. We'll get your address here.
Send it by email. Don't say it on the air. And then it turns out being on the show. So
we will send you one.
We'll send
you one. I don't know if it'll be we'll see.
I wear a gas mask whenever I'm in a store. I have an actual gas mask with, if I'm going like buying groceries or something like that, because you're just so close to our people. It seems to be the way in which it's spreading mostly. So
yeah.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I'm going to do the same kind of silly clap. I know it seems silly to the watchers who are watching this, but it's what works. So, and I'm going to bring us in, start another sponsor, and we'll go right in, and I'll let you go from there. Okay, Mr. Tate?
Yes, sir, ma'am.
Ma'am, sir. Okay.
Senor, senorita.
You need to stop talking.
You just assumed a gender.
Oh, no.
Zinger. Good job.
Fernando, I happen to know her gender.
You're just assuming it. You can never know anything because there's no such thing. There's infinite genders, right?
There's so many bloopers here. Okay. Moment of silence, if we can do it. Welcome back, everyone. This is Shelby
Awesome.
Gallagher at Prepping 2.0 with our awesome guest today, Furfall, from, oh my gosh, I just lost it. You're from this great,
I got it. It's furfall.blogspot.com and author of several books. And we were talking, Fernando, about what stuff costs. People
Yeah.
listening to the Prepping 2.0 show, and I'm guessing viewers of your show, we can't get enough of the
no.
examples of how prices go crazy and how the whole thing falls apart, because
Yeah.
in our minds, we can really imagine this and we need to prepare. So you were talking about people buying things they didn't need just because it might retain value, like a car.
Yeah.
What are some more examples?
Look, it's. I mean, over the years, I've learned a lot. You know, I started this with my own observations from Argentina, but throughout these years, I've learned so much more and learned from other people in other places. Like recently, I'm talking a lot with, especially with my Spanish channel, I'm talking a lot with people from Venezuela, and those guys buy food. They stock up on. I mean, a can of food is like, you know, like jewelry for them. It's like something precious because I mean, a can of this is not one of my examples, but a can of tuna in Venezuela, it costs like $2, $2 US. So it's more expensive than buying in the United States. And that is about the minimum wage monthly of a guy living in Venezuela. So a Venezuelan worker on minimum wage cannot afford to buy one of those cans of tuna. So imagine how precious that is. I didn't get to see that so bad, but I remember one price. I think it was like a box of cornflakes that was like 11 pesos, and that would have been at that time like $3 or $4, which it's just a tiny box of cornflakes, $3. And the same would go for many things. Anything that was imported, of course, was impossible because the price was in dollars. But even stuff like cell phones that later on people would buy it in just a way of buying something that is not melting in your hands. People would try to buy, of course, US dollars. Some folks bought gold and silver, but it wasn't as common. Most people try to save in dollars because that's the thing you can trade right away. Even on the street, you will have folks that will accept US dollars instead of pesos. Again, same thing in Venezuela right now.
So let me translate that though a little bit. So
Sure.
can of tuna in Venezuela, $2. So I'm
Yeah.
sitting here going, well, that's not awful. But the flip
You're
side
making
of that though, look at it differently though. An entire month wages. Here
exactly
in America, if you're making minimum wage, we're talking a thousand plus, thousands of dollars to
right.
one can of tuna. So the value can be, it's not just what the cost of it is, it's what it takes to earn it. So
It's exactly. It's in relation to. I mean, everything is in relation to how much money you make.
yeah,
You may be laughing about a can of tuna, but if that can of tuna costs $1,500, you're not going to be laughing so much
exactly.
anymore. So imagine that's the only way in which you can wrap your head around this. Imagine if a can of tuna costs $1,500. And you may, oh, that's impossible. Well, no, it's not impossible. Those are just little pieces of paper. The can of tuna is actually a chunk of fish inside a can. The
Exactly.
paper is a lot easier to print. And I mean, let's not even get into digital current money because that's not even paper. At least you have the paper to burn with $1,500. But that's the way, and that also creates a parallel economy in which I mean, I talk with people in Minnesota. They look, we don't make that kind of money because I'm an electrician or I'm someone with skills and I work online and I try to get paid in dollars because I wouldn't be able to survive with the Venezuelan minimum wage. No one survives in Venezuela with the Venezuelan minimum wage.
Wow.
Because this goes for the people that think, okay, I'll retire, go with $100,000 and move to Venezuela and live like a king, like in that comedy movie Euro Trip, is it, where the guy buys the hotel for like 20 cents or something like that? That doesn't happen in these places because if you want to live in a nice place in Venezuela, I bet it's going to be costing 100K, 200K or more. It's just the way it is. There's just a parallel economy to the madness of the official one.
Talk more, if you would, about this parallel economy, because I think it's going to pretty much replace in some parts of the U.S., and I think the collapse in the U.S. will be different regionally, but that's a whole
Of
different
course.
discussion. But the parallel economy, if you could talk about barter, talk about
Yeah.
organized crime, and then what some alternative currencies are, ammunition, gold, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, in terms of parallel economy, well, this, as you were just saying, it depends a lot on, even cultural aspects. Because I would venture that lots of places in the United States, if something like that happens, I'd see silver, junk silver, gold. That would be something that most preppers in the United States and even right wing type of folks will easily move towards if the U.S. dollar devaluates some in some similar manner. But what we would see is, well, you mentioned barter before. There were these barter clubs, and these were mostly an emergency resource for people that just had nothing. If you don't have a job, you don't have a job. A year goes by where you're honestly looking for one and you're not finding it. You just go to you would go to one of these places and say, I can, cut hair. That's what I do. I'm a barber, so I do that. What do you have to offer in exchange? Okay, I'm a psychiatrist. I mean, this would be actual examples. A psychiatrist without a job would offer a session for about an hour, and usually you had these coupons, like these barter club coupons, that were like somewhat of a currency to some extent. And if you made anything, if you made clothes, if you prepared food, anything that you did or services, you would change those in these barter clubs. They, uh, it depends a lot because usually these were things for people that had nothing else to go on. It was not ideal by any means, and if you actually had money, even devaluated money, usually people would accept that more readily than any barter club coupon or anything like that. But the barter club thing was very much real and at a time very extended. As things developed, eventually people moved away from those. I guess you can still find them somewhere, but they're not as common as they once used to be. Now,
Mm.
yeah, you're going to be asking something.
Yep, I am, but I'm going to jump in here. We got to give our
Sure.
awesome sponsors a quick shout out. Quick shout out to Humana Foods talking about getting prepped. If you go to our website, go over to Friends and Affiliates, Humana Food deals in bulk freeze dried food. Use the word prep at checkout, get 10% off. Great way to get stocked up on food preps so that you don't have to do bartering coupons. Another one I'm going to give a shout out to Backwoods Home Magazine, a quarterly magazine that does a great job letting you know how you can live off the grid, live on your land, and be self sufficient, which these days we can see will be very helpful. Use the words or the term six, the digit six off, and you'll get a little discount. So I wanted to ask you this though, for fall.
Sure.
And you're kind of leading us into it. Talk about some of the like the flea markets, town. What was that like? And
Yeah.
the kind of the I don't know. We would call it probably a farmers market here, but I don't. My imagination tells me that was a good place to go, and yet a very bad place to go in terms of safety.
Yeah, usually they would have. I mean, there's different types, but the more typical one, they want. I went several times. Usually, you would find like clothes at very decent prices. Some of these were counterfeit. Fake jeans,
Mm-hmm.
like counterfeit jeans and that sort of thing. They usually had their own security they were very tight about it. So you'd have like a couple guys with a shotgun, one and then the other, very very Mad Max like. But this was maybe going on inside like a big, I don't know, like one of these buildings, one of these large buildings that were empty, like a former factory of some kind. So you'd have like a big room, and you'd have like maybe 1,000 square feet kind of thing, or I mean something very big. And they'd organize this in like little kiosks or little desks. Think of it like a gun show, like that
Mm-hmm.
sort of thing,
Mm-hmm.
but larger and with different sort of stuff. Um, it would usually be run by someone kind of shady. So the largest one, which this was not a barter club, but one of these larger markets that they worked with currency. They would people would come from other countries to buy there and take back. So they would come from Bolivia or some of the neighboring countries, and come to the largest one that was in Buenos Aires, and stock up on and buy like a truck full of clothes or produce or whatever, and take it back home for selling. So they would have their own security, and yet they were dangerous too, because every once in a while there were internal affairs there that were resolved pretty violently at times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you
I
talk.
guess that would be the best way of.
Yeah, absolutely. You talk about in your street survival skills book about how to act and how not to act around, town, basically, to make yourself less of a target and everything. Talk about that, because that seems like a pretty practical skill that Americans are going to need to be using here pretty soon.
Well, and I'm going to jump in here. I think to some degree, and I know you've talked extensively to Matt Bracken about the violence, the Antifa, the BLM violence on the streets. I think,
Yeah.
and you just talked about the 72-year-old man on the farm. I think this is skills that people need now here in America. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, it's complex, like these things usually are, because on one hand, maybe you want to be politically active, you want to make your voice heard, and that is not only very legitimate, but it's also necessary in many cases to make your voice heard and be out there, be visible, and explain that, make it obvious that you're not being fooled, and you want to be taking a stance at some point. At the same time, that is something that can be dangerous. So you may be attacked because you're wearing a hat that is not, affiliated with, or exactly. So any little thing that kind of says you're right wing, you're left wing, you may end up getting attacked because of that. So if you just want to be the famous gray man or gray woman, you just have nothing that shows your affiliation with anything, and you're just like a blur in the mass. So maybe at some points you want to be that. Maybe at some point you want to have a flag and be in a rally or in a protest or whatever, and make your opinion heard. Which is, of course, these days everything is political. Even wearing a mask is a political statement at some point. If you're wearing a mask, you're, but you have to understand that there's a time for everything, and there's a time where you may not want to be targeted by lunatics. That's the point in which you try to stay away from that. But also, another twist of all of this is right now people are thinking political. Right now in America, political is the only thing in people's minds right now. But there's going to be an afterwards in which there's maybe going to be people that don't care about any of that, and they're just going to be coming after you because you have money, because you may have a nice truck, because they think you have a nice place, and you have stuff for stealing, and you're going to be attacked because of that sort of thing. So if I'm wearing like clothes of a certain brand that are more expensive, a watch that looks a little bit more, even if I have in an open carry state, I have a gun, and I look at the gun, and because I know firearms, I can see $1,000 gun in someone's hip. If I'm a criminal, I'm not only thinking he has a gun, I'm thinking that guy has money because he has $1,000 gun or a $2,000 gun. You know what I mean? And people think, I'm cool, I'm okay because I'm packing. Well, dude, you're packing something that says a lot about your social economic status, and maybe that's not something you want to be revealing. For women, it may be jewelry. For guys and women in general, maybe watches. But these guys are so good at this, they narrow down even your shoes or the pants you're wearing or the jacket. So that's the kind of thing you want to be careful about.
Fernando, we're going to take a quick break, and I'm going to mention some sponsors. We're going to stay on and everything like that. I wanted to mention Katie Armor, C-A-T-I Armor, which stands for Come and Take It Armor. They were a sponsor. They haven't been for a while. Here's what happened, a short story. They were selling so much body armor, probably because they were on Prepping 2.0, that they were backlogged in orders, and they weren't taking care of some of our listeners. So we had a little pause. We put a little pause on the sponsorship. They've got their orders fulfilled now, and they're ready to get people out stuff in a timely manner. So they're back on the show. Katie Armor, C-A-T-I Armor.com. Use the coupon code GRANT, and you get 10% off. The last thing I want to mention, and then there won't be any more sponsor interruptions. It's not really a sponsor. We love lurkers, who are the folks that listen to the show on our radio stations. They listen to the show on the internet, and they don't become Patreons. They lurk in the shadows, and they're always wondering, how awesome would that after show be? And they wonder, how great would it be, and they never know. Well, for $2 a month, you can become a Patreon. You can stop being a lurker, come out of the shadows. If you send an email to us, go onto the website, prepping2-0.com, find out where that is. The word lurkers in it. We're going to send you a package of cool stickers and stuff to thank you for coming out of the shadows. So there we go. Shall we return to the question, Shelby?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Here's one for you, Fernando. And this is a question we have a lot in the United States, and I want to see how this played out in Argentina. It's a sensitive topic, but it's an important one. Human trafficking, prostitution, having to kidnap. I mean, just, the whole thing. It's international. No matter what language you're speaking, it happens all over the world. What was that like? Was it a big problem or a little problem in Argentina?
It was, and it still is, a very serious problem. And as you're saying, people don't know this, but people are trafficked all over the world, no matter where you are. You think this is the kind of thing you just see in Taken, that Liam Neeson movie. That stuff happens for real, and it happens all over the world. I remember one specific case in Argentina. This young woman, she was walking back home and she just got snatched. She was gone, and her mother never stopped looking for her, and they never found her, unfortunately. But she went tracking all the leads from other women held in captivity in prostitution rigs. And she kept learning about her being moved from one place of the country to another. It's usually a lot of political support that they have. They have support from the local police many times, but many times it's even local politicians that support this, because they are involved. They go to these places and they have dirt on them, and they're not going to be speaking out. And same goes for the police many times. So it's a serious problem, and the more things degrade, the more you see this happening. So that goes along with crime, with kidnapping, with trafficking, with substance abuse and drug use. All of this is interconnected to how bad things are in general. It is about people that are desperate because they're out of jobs, maybe, but it's also because of people that see the opportunity to do this as a line of work.
So I have a question about that, because this is something that's near and dear to my heart, Fernando. But real quick, we have one last sponsor. Promise you. Minutemen Coffee. Sure. Find them on our website, prepping2-0.com. Great folks over there. They're a great example of what's happening here in the United States with some of the mainstream social media outlets who keep deplatforming people. Minutemen keep getting deplatformed on Facebook. So the best place to find them is on our website. You get 15% off anyone who goes over there off your coffee order by using the term I Miss America at checkout. There's a special blend. We are drinking it right now, the I Miss America blend, but you can use that code and get 15% off. Great, patriotic, awesome folks over there at Minutemen Coffee. We love them. We saved the best for last in terms of sponsors. Going back to you, Fernando, do you find... Yes, there's human trafficking where there's people getting snatched off the street. I get that. And that happens no matter what. And I think it gets worse in a collapse, and you've described that. Did you find that women prostituted themselves so they could feed themselves? I saw that in news footage coming out of Venezuela. Did you see that happening in Argentina?
Man, it's such a complicated topic. I guess that some women thought there was no other option.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think that it's so easy to judge what other people do unless you walk in their shoes.
Right.
I think that in the case of Argentina, you still have somewhat of an opportunity that if you don't want to end up doing something like that, you have other lines of making a living. Now, in places like Cuba, for example,
mm-hmm.
you're done. They're expecting that from you, and you have a communist regime where you have nothing, and there's lots of women that are basically, it's either that or they have nothing else to live on, and it's it's even expected from the communist dictatorship that okay, they can always make a living doing that, making a few bucks with the tourists, that sort of thing. Um, I
Mm.
would say that in Argentina, if you had the inclination to find something else, in spite of the horrible look, I'll give you just one example. I'm a guy, but it doesn't matter. This applies to everyone, nonetheless. During some of the worst of the crisis, I went out there and I found like in a couple of weeks, I got like with like two or three solid job offers. When there's been guys that were looking for jobs for a year, and I'm no genius. I'm nothing special. But what I can tell you that probably made the difference is the attitude and the can-do mentality. What they saw in me, like when actually one of the interviewers said, "You seem like the guy that would get stuff done." Because when I asked you about this specific software, you said you didn't know about it, but you made like it doesn't matter. I'll figure it out in just no time, and I'll be using it like an expert in a week from now. That's the
Mm.
kind of thing that a lot of people looking for workers look forward to. So it's a lot on how good you are yourself in making your own future your own way. You know.
Wow, wow. So yeah, your work ethic is what will get you through that. That's a nice, that's
Yeah.
refreshing thought. Yes, very good. Glenn
Well,
has a question.
Fernando, we've been talking a lot about, and thank you for bringing this up, a lot of what I would call mindset things. You just mentioned a great example of it, having a can-do attitude, and yes, there'll be side
Yeah.
jobs. It may not be normal jobs and everything else. Um, we have, I don't know, 3-4 minutes until we go into the after show for Patreons and watchers of the Modern Survivalist YouTube channel. Um, when it comes down to items, things, what are some things that you think Americans never really think that they should have going into one of these things? Do we have sort of an American blind spot? It's like, and I'll make up an example, like no one in America ever thought we'd need can openers, right? And then you're saying, wow, when we were in Argentina, can openers were really important. Because I mean, what are some things maybe even that people can go out and get if they haven't already,
Yeah.
that you've learned from your experience are really, really important?
Training.
Yeah,
Training and
that's
know how to use your gun properly.
you can't get that on
No,
Amazon, huh?
I'm serious.
Yeah, no, that
Unfortunately, no. Unfortunately, no. But it's the thing that I find that lots of people think that a gun is like some kind of magic wand, and it's not. If you know how to use it, and I go back to this thing of okay, maybe when things are not all that bad, you can't get away with pointing a gun at someone and scaring them off, or it's maybe just one guy coming after you. Look at this stuff that I put it in my Spanish channel. It's two, three, four guys coming after you, and sometimes it's about being lucky. More often than not, it's about being good at shooting. I mean, my instructor, my shooting instructor in Buenos Aires, he was the chief of instructors for the Buenos Aires police. The guy has, I don't even want to say how many cases he got involved in shootings and killing people in self-defense or in the line of work. But it happens a lot. And even for average folks that are just coming back home at night from work, that window of opportunity when you open the door to have to go out or come back home, you get jumped and attacked by several people. And at that time, you better be good with that firearm. And I guess that's one of the things. Lots of Americans have guns, not as many Americans know how to use it properly and take it seriously in terms of a holistic approach to knowing how to fight.
That is awesome. And if anyone doubts that that's what he is saying is true, ask Kyle Rittenhouse. How many people
Yeah,
jumped him? And because
yeah,
that young 17-year-old had some training, he defended himself. He's got to defend himself now legally, but he's at least breathing. So, folks, we
yeah.
have to kind of wrap it up here just a little bit. We're going to go into the after show, so don't worry if you're a Patreon. But I always like to let these are weird times we live in, folks, and I encourage you to go check out Fernando's YouTube channel, especially watch some of the interviews he's done with Matt Bracken. He's been a guest on this show, and and the street fighting and as things continue to unroll here in the United States, there's so many parallels that we're going to talk about that in the after show. But before we go, I always like to leave people with the inspiring phrase from Benjamin Franklin: failing to prepare is preparing to fail. Folks, stay safe, stay tuned, stay vigilant. Have a good week.
All right. So it is
Awesome.
the after show. We're still recording on TMS. And in just a moment,
Awesome.
we will be recording on P2O's after show.
Absolutely. So we'll give a moment of silence. We'll clap you in, and then I want to continue that question. So
Yep.
yeah.
And then I'll start off with Patreon questions after you're done. All right, cool.
Here we go. Ready? Welcome back, everyone, to the after show. Patreon supporters, modern survivalist watchers, you're getting to see the backstage production of Prepping 2.0. So Fernando was just talking about street fighting training. I'm going to jump in here and add this too. If you're looking for that kind of training, I know, check out all of his stuff over on our Friends and Affiliates page. Pretty loaded online trade right now. Everything's online, right? Because we got it. All of this is going on, and get ready. There's going to be lockdowns 2.0.
And no one
coming.
has any ammunition to actually go shoot, so it all has to be online.
You have to find out creative alternatives. Please do that. And so much behind that kind of training is mindset. And I will agree, absolutely. Look what's happening on the streets, the big streets of America right now. It's not like the movies where it's like a group comes and jumps you, and they come at you one at a time from the group. No, it's a full body jumping. Ask the police officers in Chicago and New York and Portland and Seattle what it's like to get jumped all at once by a group of people. So get your training going. Pretty loaded. It's pretty awesome on that. So Fernando, in those, what I want to people to see what parallels that they see with your experience in Argentina in year 2000, 2001 to now. And I'm sure as you're watching what's happening in America, you see a lot of parallels. What are some of the scary parallels that you see? I see some, but I didn't live through one. So I'm on one side, you're on the other. What are your thoughts on that?
There's, of course, going to be differences. There's, one of the things I've struggled over the years since I started doing this is, and it's very natural, and it's very human, and it happens everywhere, and everyone thinks they're super special, and their situation is different from everyone else's. That is the most natural human thing in the world. The thing is, I talk with people from South Africa, and they have the same life experiences as I have in many places. And you think South Africa, Latin America couldn't be any more different. I talk with people in the United States, and they would tell me, we'd never have ... we never have like a communist government in place. We never see this. I remember like phrases exactly of, before this happens in the United States, you'd see a revolution. And I've seen many of those things that people were so sure you'd never see happen, and there's been no revolution, and people just keep rolling with it and adapting. And because again, it is the most natural thing in the world to just want to get by, not get caught in all this crap. You don't want to get shot. You don't want to get killed. You don't want to get thrown in jail. And especially people like us, we're law-abiding people that we just want to be left alone mostly. We just don't want to get caught in all of this madness. But at the same time, there's people that are willing to do that. There's people that are willing to, they have nothing to live for. Many times that's the case. There's people that are completely crazy. That's the thing as well. And that's where all of this clashes, because on one hand we're those that have something to lose, and on the other hand there's people that have nothing worth living for. So this is so typical. Why is it that a kid would point a gun at you and risk getting shot, or even if you have them at gunpoint, they still keep coming at you? Well, because that's what they are. That's the only thing they're capable of doing. And you mentioned Kyle Rittenhouse. That's a perfect example of, a combination of things. He had the training, he had the right gun for that kind of scenario. Also, there's an element of luck involved in all of that, because if just one little thing goes wrong, he doesn't make it. He just gets shot by that guy that said he wanted to shoot him. If that fraction of a second he had pulled the trigger, Kyle would be dead right now.
Mm-hmm.
If he hadn't doubt that little second, and he said it himself when he got interviewed in the hospital, the guy that got the arm blown, the bicep guy,
Mm-hmm.
lefty, like as we call him among friends. um, Lefty said, I wish I had shot him. I wish I had emptied and dumped the mag on him. He could have just done that. So
Mm.
it is very, very important to be as best prepared as you can. And you were just saying, Glenn, that people don't have ammunition. Sure. That's why you should have stocked up on it before. You know how all the preppers that have those piles of ammo. I have a friend in U.S. that he has thousands and thousands upon thousands of rounds, because the idea is not only have enough for self-defense, but have enough for training when this goes for years without ammunition being available or just being super expensive. So, and you can do lots of things with free, with airsoft. There's interesting things you can do with airsoft. There's things you can do with dry fire as well. So there's always little things you can improve on there.
Excellent advice. Yes, the conversation about stocking up and training, Shelby and I had this morning before we came to the studio, as a matter of fact. So I'd like to start with the Patreon questions here. We have 17 of them. And Fernando, it is much late. It's very late at night where you are. You're on another part of the world right now, which would explain a little bit of the crunchiness and the static in some of the line, but that's just the way it is. We shouldn't complain when we can just talk by video to somebody on the other side of the world. So that's pretty cool. So we'll go through these, and if you need to go, Fernando, you just let us know. We've been very appreciative of your time, and we want to respect that. So the first question comes from Patreon, Becca Krupla, and she says, "What?" And by the way, if you've answered some of these before, that's great. You can say I already answered this, but it's like I said at the beginning of the show, this is the Fernando Story
Sure,
Hour.
no
So
problem.
you tell us, because you've lived through it and we want to listen more than we want to talk. But Becca says, or asks, what was the time frame from the start to the complete collapse? What phase would you say America is currently in of the collapsing phase? Great question.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's also one of those questions you get a lot, and it's kind of hard to get a straight answer because it's a very complex topic. I mean, the problems in Argentina, you could go back to 70, 80 years ago, when lots of these populist government parties started gaining power and became stronger and more popular. But I would say, like, last one with in 2001, you had seen a period of the previous decade. It was in Argentina. It was called the decade of "Give me two," because people would buy two of everything because you had so much more money than you actually needed.
Hmm.
So if you were buying a TV, you just bought two. You didn't care. All of that "Give me two" thing during the 90s was based on a fake economy that was not real, because it was the exchange rate of 1 peso to $1, which is impossible. You cannot sustain that, because of course Argentina is not the United States, so an Argentine peso in no one's mind is worth $1. It hasn't got that power of an economy. So during the 90s, you saw that, and it was based on all of a lie that was fueled by, and it was possible by the destruction of local industry. We had everything was cheaper being bought from abroad, so no one produced anything locally. This is something that you're probably seeing in the United States, and you've been seeing it for many years now. It's nothing new. So that would be yet one of those parallelisms. And of course, this also means that not only you're not producing stuff, but you're destroying good local jobs as well. Something else that you've seen lately and can relate to. Now, the big thing was what we were talking about in the beginning, when basically they said we cannot pay our debt, we just have to default on it. We're just insolvent, and that was the tipping point in which banks close their doors and everything goes to hell. I think that currently, right now in the United States, it's a very, I mean, I try to say positive, but it's a very complicated moment right now because you just don't know the hand you'll be dealt. And based on the things you're seeing Joe Biden say right now, I would be very concerned. I try to stay super positive, but they are going to be moving more faster than you could possibly imagine. They're moving fast already without an official win. and they're already moving. So you're going to be slapped across the face by this. And people will just look, what the hell happened right now? Where are we? That's what people are going to be going through.
Yeah, the shock of all of this. Of course, that's not a problem for listeners or viewers of the Modern Survivalist and for Prepping 2.0, especially Patreons listening now. But it's going to be a big problem for a lot of average Americans who just they don't even think like this. Ray Jensen asked about how to be a gray man, and you already gave that answer. Papa Smurf asks, which Fallout game do you prefer? I'm not sure. Fallout video game, I presume. Maybe your Fairfall name has something to do with that. Yeah. So, and then MCOM
Now,
Reg.
people
Okay.
see that.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Please.
people see, because I do play Fallout. I have the little figure there in the back, and people see that and figure out. Yeah, I play Fallout, all of them except the last one, which was terrible. That would be a short answer.
Okay, that's good. I knew it was a video game. See, I'm not very cool, Fernando, and I don't play video games. That's cool. MCOM Reg, you asked a long question, but I'll ask the first paragraph of it because it really captures the essence of it. He asks, it's said that when you're in a war, you don't recognize it. When the collapse happened in Argentina, did you actually recognize it was happening? And what were some of the first subtle symptoms that came up? What a great question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a good one. People, denial. Again, one of the things I've noticed talking with people, either talking with Salco, talking with people from South Africa, talking with people from different parts of the world that they got either through economic collapses or war, or a guy in eastern Ukraine that suddenly sees Russians rolling in, and the natural thing is denial. This is not happening. This is you see it right now. People, well, this is not happening. This cannot be happening right now. Well, yes, it is. Denial is a very strong mechanism that keeps you from going insane. So that's why it's happening. I always tell this thing that happened to us when we saw the economy going belly up in Argentina. We went to the bank, tried to get out $1,000, and the clerk in the bank told us we don't have $1,000 in the bank. And we were like, how do you not have $1,000? No, we don't have that. That's too much cash for us. You have to go to Central. And the following day, they closed banks. They closed everyone's accounts. They froze everyone's accounts and turned because you were able to have US dollar accounts. You had $1,000 and you had $1,000 in a bank in Argentina. All of a sudden, they said, no, you don't have $1,000 here anymore. You have the equivalent to a devalued peso that it's going to be like 30% of your actual savings, or later on, 20%. Now it would be like 0.001%. They took it all. So that would be the big, that was maybe one of the big points. And my mother-in-law has this, she went through the same thing. And my wife tells me that they went to the bank and she asked the manager of the bank, who was friends with her, is this going to be happening? Our bank's going to be closing? That's all silly talk. None of that's going to be happening here. The following day, they closed banks.
Wow.
Exactly. And yet this is a great segue into a question that I have. So I put it up on the Patreon post because I didn't want to forget to ask you, to be quite honest. When we're doing a show, and some of you are getting a flavor of this from seeing the video of the backstage, we are multitasking. We have multiple things going on at once. And as Shelby will tell you, I'm not the best multitasker in the world. But anyway, here's a question for you from me. I'll ask here one in case I forget to ask in the show. What do you think about having cash on hand? Lots or a little? And this question presumes some inflation, but not the hyperinflation of Argentina. Because, of course, if you've got hyperinflation, then cash on hand doesn't really help. So this is like before the hyperinflation. Is cash useful only in some phases of the collapse, like a beginning, or is it useful throughout the duration of it? Because we have some cash and we're wondering if we should put it into different kinds of stuff, or if cash will be really, really helpful. And of course, this gets into the whole electronic, payment system and all that other stuff. What do you think about having cash on hand?
Yeah, the saying of cash is king is definitely true, and especially if it's something more stable. In the case of Argentina, the Argentine peso has always been terrible, and it's always melting in your pocket. It loses. I mean, you have a country with 25% inflation, 30% inflation each year, it's just it's useless for you. But if you're going to be saving in dollars, now the interesting thing is this last year the U.S. dollar has lost a lot of its value, and you may have seen it with the inflation or the famous shrinkflation that I've mentioned more than once. Shrinkflation, where the same product just got smaller. Basically, you're just cutting there on the product there. I mean, it's more expensive, but they're just hiding it by changing the packaging a little bit, or a different shaped bottle. This happened also with in UK with Brexit. The Toblerone chocolate started losing little bits of its chocolate, and it was the same price. So you see all of this. You want to have cash. Cash is definitely important, especially I would say for that first stage. Maybe having a month or two of expenses in cash, I would feel very happy with that. I think it's a good way to go. And then if you want to have like in different baskets, eggs in different baskets, a bit of precious metals, something that is well recognized, is silver, eagles, and gold would be maybe the thing that's more easily recognized for Americans. You see an American silver eagle, you know exactly what it is. So that would be something I look into as well. I always try to caution people regarding how heavy this is. If you're fortunate to put a bit of money aside, silver is nice because people feel that I spend a few bucks, I have a big old silver coin, and it's beautiful. That gets heavy. If you start having a lot of weight in silver, you definitely want to start moving towards gold, which is a lot more compact. There's this great interview with Jocko Willix, the Navy SEAL guy.
Yeah, Jocko.
He interviewed Jocko. Yeah, sorry for that. Jocko. Yeah, Jocko. He interviews a survivor from an extermination camp during the Second World War. Rose. Rose was her first name. I cannot remember her last name, but she was in Auschwitz, and she said that her parents had hid a small tin with a few pieces of jewelry, the only things they had of value. And after surviving Auschwitz, she went back to her parents' home with her sisters, and she found that little tin. There's been people that managed to escape Germany during the worst of the Holocaust, or actually before that, and they would take those pieces of gold that they had, or those gold coins, and that's what allowed them to make a life after that. If you escaped in time, you avoid those extermination camps. If not, you were thrown in a train. So that is, I always remember that because history repeats itself. Now you have Bitcoin. I think it's a tool. I've used it. I've been using it for years, and I'm starting to trust it more and more as time goes by. I always tell people, don't put anything you're not willing to lose in it. But I think it is, and I know for a fact that people in Venezuela, in South Africa, in different places, they use it, and in Argentina as well, they use it, and it's a valuable tool for them.
And that's a great segue. Our next question from Calvin Gooch. He was asking about gold and silver is a good thing to have, and you've answered that it is. I would add one other thing to this. I don't know where I got this idea. It wasn't my own good idea. Actually, Fernando, it could have been your good idea years ago. And that was one of the differences between gold and silver is if you show up to the trading post with an ounce of gold, it's worth $2,000 now. It could be $20,000 at the time. It's hard to make change. And if you show up with that, people are going to see it, and that's a problem. So there's a security aspect to having some silver, but you're right. If you're trying to flee the country, so big expenses like an airplane ticket, gold is good for that, which just means have both. And the question Calvin asks is, did the government try to confiscate gold and silver from citizens?
Yeah, it's. I think I may have written that in my first book because people, thought that you just drop by with a silver eagle, a gold ounce of coin, a gold eagle, and as you're saying, like $2,000, that's gonna be, all eyes are gonna be on you if you do that. The answer to that is to have a variety of things that allow you to be used in different times. For example, if you have some junk silver, that's perfectly adequate. Keep in mind that there's counterfeit junk silver as well. But I have junk silver myself, and I see that as an option. It's yet one more tool. So let's suppose you have the good fortune of having a more decent stockpile of precious metals. Maybe instead of having a couple kilos of silver, I'll have some of those gold eagles, and I'll have a small amount of those. And if I have to change that, I go to an actual precious metal dealer, and I don't go to my barter club with a gold eagle and try to flip it over there. You know what I mean? That's the kind of thing that would be definitely dangerous. Now, if you go with a wedding band, that's the kind of thing they're used to seeing in these places.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the modern survivalist viewers right now, I wanted to mention we've had 2 episodes in the past of Prepping 2.0. Episode off the top of my head 35 and episode 74. We've had, it's all been all about gold and silver with a friend of ours, Joe Jaquint, who knows a lot about this. And so if you're interested in the pros and cons of gold and silver and gold versus silver and all of this stuff, Fernando mentioned something, fundamental that never gets said enough. And that is you want actual recognizable coins like, silver eagles and gold eagles and stuff. Somebody shows me a New Zealand 1 ounce silver thing. I'm going to assume that somebody melted down some, aluminum cans and tried to cast them, right? That means nothing to me anyway. So I suggest you go to prepping2-0.com and look at some of our past episodes on gold and silver. And then Calvin has a second question. And wouldn't you know it, the second I say that, that my screen goes away, but I am prepared. Fernando. And so I have a backup plan. And here it is. He says, I'm not sure what the racial breakdown is of the population of Argentina, but during the collapse, did people start to group together along racial lines? And if not, what tended to cause people to pull together as a group?
Well, no, it's not as it is in the United States, where there's maybe more of a divide, where it's more you have like a political minority making. I guess it's not so much like that. People will just bunch up in communities. I think that's mostly the way folks have managed it, in terms of people in the same neighborhood, in the same street, trying to watch one after the other. There's not that racial tension in Argentina. There is, though, a very strong political tension. I mean, years before you saw any of this in the United States, we've been a fractured country in Argentina. The left and the right has been fighting one another for the last 15 years or more. But especially after 2001, I think I mentioned this in the beginning of the show. Since 2001, it became very, very. I mean, families that don't talk with one another because you're on the right, I'm on the left. I'm pro Kirchner, which is the president, and then the wife of Nestor Kirchner, who became the head figure for the left in Argentina, now in government. You just would not talk with people like that, and they hate your guts. They just despise you, and you have very strong feelings about them as well, because you know how they feel about you. And this is maybe one of the things a lot of folks still don't understand. Maybe you don't have that in your heart. Maybe you don't feel like that, but you have to realize that if they do, they're forcing your hand. Because if they're going to be coming after you because of who you are, you will not have an option. You will not have the option of being the good guy of, no, I'm okay. Just slaughter me. Just slit my throat. I don't want to live anymore. That's either the stance you take, or you stand up for yourself. And sometimes you even have to fight so as to deal with them, because they will not back down. Some of them will not back down.
I'm so glad you made that point, because I've felt that and never really articulated it. But now that I hear you, I can, of course, quote you and copy you and make it sound like I'm brilliant. But but that's the thing. A lot of us preppers, a lot of conservatives, we're almost all conservatives on the right. Many of us are Christians. We don't think of ourselves, and I think we're not hateful people. And we just genuinely want to get along with everybody and have a good life, and we want everyone to be happy.
Yeah.
And we can't understand the other side, why they want to do these things. And it is a hindrance. It's a disability. It's a problem for our side, because we can't say, okay, well, you hate me. Well, listen, now it's different. I mean, you try to burn my house down, I'm going to shoot you. So There's that. Aaron Lewis says, this is
Yeah.
great. He says, wow, super psychic. I just got Fernando's book yesterday. Can't wait to hear the conversation. That's cool. Patrick says,
That's
what early signs did you see that most everyone else wasn't seeing? Did you
Mm.
try warning anyone if you did see signs, and what was the reaction? And this is interesting given that your father was in the banking world. So yeah, what early signs, and did you try
yeah.
to warn people?
There even before that, because as I mentioned before, even in the 80s, there was another hyperinflation. And I actually remember a big fight in my family. My father was trying to warn my grandmother on my mother's side. He was trying to warn them about getting their money out because everything was going to be going to hell, and they just didn't listen to him, and they lost everything, that they had. Well, not everything, but they lost a lot of their life savings on that. And after that, they came and asked him, what can we do now? And I remember him being so angry and basically telling him, like shouting out, like, now you're screwed. Now you're done. You cannot do anything. You should have listened to me when I warned you. He was so upset about that. And I was a small kid back then, and I still remember that big fight, because there's this feeling of you may try warn people. Some people may listen, some people won't. That's always the way it is. Um, my advice would be just put it out there. Anyone that wants to listen will listen, and those that don't want to listen, no matter how much you insist, they're not ready for it. They're not capable of it, and you're just wasting your time and maybe upsetting them. You're not going to be gaining anything from fighting everyone and trying to make them understand. If they get it, great. Especially if it's family, if it's a friend. But even that can end up pretty ugly if people just are not ready for it.
Mhm.
Wow. This is why you have a guest on the show, or in our case, we're a guest on your show, Fernando, that has lived through this. There's no substitute
Awesome.
for this. Bjorn Gottfriedson, he asked a question that you've already answered, but I want to read it because it's pretty telling. He says, sorry for any bad English. It's not my first or even my second language. I presume he's Scandinavian, although I question that from his question down here. He says, Fairfall, I've heard of you, although I've not gone deep enough into your content. Apparently I need to. Sorry for not doing that sooner. He says, what are some signs from your home country that warned you of collapse that you're seeing here? And you've already described that, Fernando. And then he says, I worry a lot because my family escaped communists and civil war, and now I see that here
Yeah,
too. How far along do you think we are? You've answered that
yeah,
question. And then he says, also, thank you, Glenn and Shelby, for putting yourselves out there for helping us prepare. I love this country and how free we are. At home, in his home country, we would have been hated for preparing because we would have been called hoarders. These American communist children have no idea the kind of snakes they're playing with.
Mm.
Wow. There you go. Ted O'Neill says or asks,
yeah,
and you've answered
yeah.
this too. How did people in more rural areas and remote areas fare? Did being away from cities provide a buffer for them, roving gangs and all that? You've answered that, so thank you. See, Ben Wheeler says, another question we've already asked, but we like to read the questions anyway. We like to let Patreons, hear their names and know that we're doing that. And by the way, I've skipped over a couple questions that were kind of detailed and just getting to the general stuff. Ben Wheeler says, what are some of the similarities between the Argentina collapse and the American collapse? Having studied Argentina's and seen the Balkans firsthand, that's Ben saying that. You've answered that. Knowing what you know now, what would you do? Ooh, this is a great question. This is Joshua Keeler. Knowing what you know now, Fernando, what would you do differently at the
Mm.
beginning of a collapse?
Yeah, it's a question everyone asks, but no one likes the answer. I would have gotten the hell out of there sooner, and I'm not alone in that. I actually talked with Selco before, and we're both like, yeah, definitely. I just get out of there. If I know a country's going to be going to hell, I just leave. But here, it is again. It is one of those hard questions because sometimes you just don't want to leave. I've talked with people in Venezuela that just I know it's going to hell. I know we're going to be overrun by communism, by socialism, and we're going to be living in a complete nightmare. But this is still my country, and I just don't want to leave it. And that is that has to be respected. If you just don't want to. Now, personally, I got tired of living like that. I got tired. I mean, I like shooting, I like firearms, but I don't like the idea of having to watch my back 24/7 all day long and always living with a risk of something. It's not just me. I have a wife, I have kids, and maybe someone on the street looks at me and says, oh, maybe I'm not going to be going after this guy because he looks maybe a little bit that, you know, something in your body language and the way you look and the way you dress and the way you walk. You just don't look like a nice target for him. But he looks at my wife and he said, well, yeah, there I go. And your kids as well. And this is something that always haunted me while living in Argentina was all the stories of people. There was this guy that left Argentina in 2001 because of the crisis. He moved to the United States. 10 years later, he comes back. The day he arrives, he goes to buy a pack of cigarettes. He gets shot and killed the day he came back. There's people that had horrible things happen to them just before they actually left. Or there's people that left because they got a son killed or a wife killed or something, they broke into their house and tortured people or raped people. Those things that you end up leaving just too damn late. You just waited too damn much, and that's not good enough. You just cannot do that. That's what I saw as, man, I don't want to keep doing this. I'd rather go shooting for competition, for my practical pistol competition thing, and just have fun. But living in a place that is dangerous is just not fun. Even though it's your country, even though you love it, and you'll never find a country like your own. Forget about it. This is true for Americans. This is true for Argentines. Wherever it is that you go, it will never be home. But there's cases in which, and there's times in which you will find someplace safe or better, just to keep enjoying life, even though you miss what you grew up knowing.
Wow. Please go ahead. Yes.
Let me add to that, because we in America right now, we're about to, I believe, and it depends on when you watch this, because things are going quickly moving here. We're about to descend into communism. And as I listen to what you say, Fernando, what I hear is that, and I'm thinking about a guest we've had before, Trevor Loudon, who is from New Zealand, which is now socialist. He's he's come to America, he's got a green card, so he got married to an American. And he said, we're all looking at all of you Americans to hold the line because everyone escapes communism and escapes collapses and goes to America. We're in America. Where are we going to go? We're the last safe place. What are your thoughts?
Look, that's a great question, and I get it a lot. And sometimes I get people like I was born here, my 5 generations. I'm gonna be fighting. I completely get that. I'm not telling anyone to leave any country. That is a super personal choice. That's up to everyone. And if you're leaving the United States because you are looking at something that's gonna be looking a lot, we know the situation that we are in right now, and we know what's likely to happen in the future. No point in repeating that. If you're gonna be leaving, going somewhere else, do your homework, because there's a good chance, like you're just saying, you're not going to be finding a lot more liberty. And it's very complex because there's maybe things, for example, I'll give you an example. It's not all bleak bad news. For example, in Italy right now, they have they've turned right the last few years, and they've gone from being a far left country to being more of a moderate right country, and they've gained the right to carry concealed guns that they didn't have before. They didn't lose it. They gained it when they didn't have it before, And now people are happy. They have their gun. If they get attacked, they have the right to defend themselves in their houses. And they didn't used to have that. In some Eastern European countries, they are very much aware of the threat of communism because they suffered it recently. So if you go to Czech Republic and you even suggest the idea of gun control, they'll kick you out of there. It's not acceptable. It is not something they're willing to put up with because they saw Nazis roll in and take their guns, and they're not willing to compromise on that. Now, am I saying leave the United States and move to Czech Republic? No, I'm not saying that by a long shot. I think, and trying to look at the half full glass thing, as bad as things are right now, I think it's still worth fighting, being politically involved. You you have to know how to roll with the punches. You have to, and one of the things that kind of haunts me is we all saw those liberal tears, being hysterical like little children and losing it completely. I don't want that happening. I want people to go, okay, this is the hand we've been dealt. This is the situation as it is right now. We are going to be fighting for it as we can. We're going to be figuring things out. We're going to be adapting and being as ready for it as we can, knowing what you guys are going to be doing from now on, being very aware of that. Don't kid yourself regarding that, because it is coming. But I'm going to be trying how to flip this. I'll see how to turn this around as soon as possible. That's at least the way I would go about it if I'm in the United States right now.
Yeah, and Shelby and I get the question a lot. You guys live in Washington State, which we do, very rural, not in Seattle. And yeah. I mean, why would you live there and it's so bad? And our answer is, this is a forward operating base. Yeah, we view this as, we've had all these, and it's too long of a story to tell now, but we've had all these amazing people enter our lives miraculously, all these amazing opportunities. I mean, we have this show and all these other things. We wrote these books, and we think that there's something special about where we are, and that we've been put here to be that lighthouse, the navigation beacon, forward operating base. And without getting too heavy on anybody, we're Christians, so when we die, we're going to a better place. So say la vie. And that's not for everybody. I'm not saying it is. Well, American Firster asked about firearms laws, and you covered that. And then, this is amazing, Fernando, the segues are too easy and too perfect here. You're just talking about considerations when moving to another country. And then Sam asks, when considering countries for relocation, did you find that any were warm climates and gun friendly? It seems like for now, the U.S. is still the best game in town. Anything to add to that, what you previously said?
Yeah, this is something I do quite a bit, because in my second book, I wrote it based on the research I did when I left Argentina. My quick answer would be that for an American, there's hardly going to be anywhere that you're going to be a lot happier. But there's exceptions. I mean, I know a guy that moved to India, and he's super happy there, because he thinks it's very spiritual. And I wouldn't be caught dead in India. I'm not interested whatsoever in living in that place. But for that guy, I suppose he's happy there. There's people that have these fantasies about Central America, or even South America, Latin America, where because it's lawless, I'll get to do whatever it is that I want. That's not the way it works. You'll be eating alive. You have no clue how to live in a place like that and navigate those waters. So I wouldn't even suggest it to anyone. I've actually consulted with people and told them not to do that sort of thing. They ended up doing it anyway, and they went back home a year later. If you want to live in a warmer climate in Latin America, Uruguay is not a bad place to be in. I think it's a neat spot. Portugal, Spain, both of those are some of the safest countries on the planet. That's a fact. They have very good things going for them. Some of the best life expectancy. So now you're not going to be having a super right-wing government, and of course that changes with elections. That's something else that people have to figure out. Maybe now you have a socialist government. Maybe in the next elections, the tables are turned, and you have, like in the case of Italy, where they quickly moved and they made lots of gains. Now, is that stable? Well, maybe it changes in the next elections. I think that Eastern Europe is a very interesting thing, and maybe one of the countries I personally like the most, Switzerland. I think they have it pretty nicely nailed down in terms of how they manage freedom, how they handle politics as well. I like how things work in Switzerland. I think it's a great example, not often imitated, but yeah, that would be a great country to go if you had the option.
Solid advice. Roy W. says he's worked in Buenos Aires, and then he asked about when did you know that this was happening, and you've already answered that. Red has a question. Thanks you for all the information that you're willing to share. And then Red asks if you see the United States going too far, heading to a hot civil war, and then some other detailed things. That brings up a question. We've been talking about collapses, and it's sort of been understood that we're talking about an Argentinian style economic collapse. What do you think about, and this will be interesting because you actually did grow up in the United States a little bit in our education system, and you heard the same things we heard about the Civil War in history class, but a perspective from outside the U.S., where you're currently outside the U.S., what do you think about
Yeah.
a civil war in the United States?
I think that right now I have hopes that's not going to be happening. At the same time, objectively speaking, it seems to be right now seems to be a very delicate moment in which it could happen. There's people that think it's unavoidable. There's people that think that it's very likely. Um, I think that at the very least, right now, you are in one of the most complex, most delicate moments in recent history. I don't know. I mean, you're better prepared to answer this based on what you're seeing over there. But from the outside, it would seem that right now it's a very complicated moment, to say the least, in American history, and it could easily escalate to that. I mean, if we're gonna be honest about this, there's already been people that have been killed over their political views. It's been happening all year almost, and you know, I think you have to prepare for at least prepare for the possibility. I don't know what do you think? What's your opinion on that?
Oh boy, Fernando, we've done entire shows on this. The short answer is that while the term Civil War is always
Yeah.
inexact, it's not precise. A civil war in the sense of, well, you mentioned Spain as being a place to possibly live. The Spanish Civil War, where you've got two sides, and it's pretty obvious. It's sparked by politics. It's sparked by an election. It's sparked by, actually, the Spanish Civil War is a really good analogy for people to look at, I think, because it started off with socialists winning and the right not wanting to give away power, and then wars and foreign invasion and all of that other stuff.
Yeah.
As far as like a big grand scale civil war where you've got two flags and two sets of uniforms, I don't think that happens in the United States for a variety of reasons. We've talked about lower scale stuff. We've talked about it varying. That would be the key term, varying. The rural areas will be very different than the cities. I think the cities will be urban hellholes run by socialists and even communists. I think the rural areas will be better off, but there will be, attacks on power grids, water systems. There'll be political assassinations. You mentioned the right and the left. If people are in your family and they're on the other side, you hate them and you don't speak to them. That's certainly happening. I can see. We actually coined a term for it, and I'm curious what you think about this. Cartelification of America. So like the Mexican cartels, not exact same thing, but like the mob, the cartels, the government, corrupt police, all the stuff you've mentioned, sort of just running things. And there's a million laws against everything, and none of them get enforced if you're the right person, and all of that, and a lot of violence, but not like the state of Idaho declaring war on the state of Massachusetts and marching over there and taking Boston. That kind of stuff I don't see.
Right. That's a kind of fantasy that sometimes people think of Civil War and they go back to history and they think we're going to be wearing cute uniforms and we're going to be having our different flags. I would look at it actually a lot like the Dirty War in Argentina, where you had a declared communist, uprising, where you had the ERP was the Ejército Revolucionario del Pueblo. That's People's Revolutionary Army. That's something that existed in Argentina back in the day. They had their battalions, they had their own military disposition. So these were communists that uprised and had an army of their own, and they were fighting the government, which was later in history is viewed as the far right military coup that is attacking the poor, freedom-loving hippies, when actually those guys were kidnapping, torturing people, putting bombs in schools. And that's the kind of thing they were doing. So they were not all freedom-loving hippies that just were listening to the wrong kind of music and getting executed for that. You're talking about a revolution. You're talking about communism, and you're talking about communists that are kidnapping people for ransom for their cause and very open about it. they're very open about it. They don't lie to anyone. We're kidnapping people because we need money for the revolution. We're putting a bomb in your school because that's where cops and military send their kids. So we're killing your children. And they don't lie about that, and they're very open about that. But it's amazing how a couple of years later, and forget about it, 10 years later, they rewrite history, and all of a sudden they were persecuting a freedom-loving Che Guevara wearing T-shirt university students, and they forget about the bombs, and they forget about how they shot so many people and executed people like animals.
Wow.
Precisely. Well, that is the end of our Patreon questions. Shelby's going to take us out of the show. And before she does, thank you immensely, Fernando. This has been fantastic. We'd love to have you on the show again. You're a great resource. The information you're giving out, especially, through the Modern Survivalist and now today on Prepping 2.0 is going to save some lives. And that is quite an honor. So Shelby, why don't you take us out?
Yeah, absolutely. But really quick, Fernando, if people want to get a hold of you, or where's the best way that
Sure.
they can find you and get a hold of you?
Well, of course, I think that mostly these days I'm focusing on my YouTube channel, The Modern Survivalist, and I know a lot of people watch this from my Spanish channel as well, which is SupervivienciaModerna. Actually, people want to practice Spanish as well, and they tell me they watch my Spanish channel for that, which if you want to do that. But YouTube would be the one. I'm in Instagram as well. It's Furfa308, and I have, of course, my books available in Amazon for people that want to learn more about all of this stuff.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I know it took a couple of hits and misses to get us here, but thank you so much. And folks, as you're listening to our Patreons, thank you so much for your support, and stay strong. We've got a bumpy ride ahead of us.
Thank you, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks.
Very cool. Well, we are done, and we'll go ahead and sign off because that will mean less editing for you on the Modern Survivalist when you put this up. So, a quick word I will say to Modern Survivalist viewers. Thank you for watching this simulcast episode of Prepping 2.0. We'd love to have you guys listening to Prepping 2.0, and that's prepping2-0.com. Thank you. And Fernando, I'm sure we'll be talking more. Thanks again, everybody.
Absolutely. It was great talking with you. And, next time we want to do this, we can do it again. And I think that people in my channel will appreciate this as well, because it's been a great conversation. So thank you both so much for it. Thanks.